Gridiron Warrior podcast is built for strength and football coaches who want to run the best possible programs for their athletes and their communities. Each episode delivers simple, practical coaching advice that transfers straight from the weight room to the field. No theory, no fluff, no fancy words, just real world strategies from coaches that are living it. So you can build stronger, faster, more durable athletes at any level. On today's episode, I have Coach Alex Nadolna on the podcast. He's the Director of Strength and Conditioning at DePaul College Prep right outside Chicago. And we spent the entire time talking about Triphasic because he does a phenomenal job of applying Cal Dietz's Triphasic Training down to the high school level. We talk about maybe some things that he does differently, some mistakes he's made along the way trying to use Triphasic, and things that have worked really well for him. So this is a great episode. Check it out. I know you'll enjoy. All right, we're back for another episode of the Gridiron Warrior podcast. I have Coach Alex Nadolna on. And one thing I love about this podcast is people recommended you. They were like, hey, I said, we need to find some, I don't want all, not that you're not a big name, coach. I don't need the NFL guys. I don't need the FBS guys. I need coaches that are doing it, that are living it, and they're making it work at the high school and the small college level, because let's be real, like the stuff that the Power 5 teams are doing is because they have great athletes in there that you can do anything with them and they get better. I want the coaches that are working with high school kids and they're making a lot of really tough logistical things work. So a lot of people recommended you, and I'm excited to have you on today. Tell us your story and tell us how you got to DePaul Prep. And kind of one thing that I don't know about and I would like to learn more is kind of that Chicago athletics level and what that looks like in terms of competition, or maybe some, where your kids have gone to the next level, things like that. Give us your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first off, appreciate you having me on, man. I'm excited. To all the people that recommended me, you asked for this, so I'm saying that in advance. So blame yourself, because they know I love to talk. So I think maybe they were just hoping I would get it out in a different venue, and then I would talk to them
you
less.
talk to me, and then you don't have to talk to anybody else.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It's like there's a finite reserve, and they're hoping that I get it out here. But yeah, so I've been doing this now for 11-ish years. And my journey with it started at Loyola University Chicago, where I did my internship. I was there working under Dave Vitale, who's awesome and still in the Chicago area, and Alex Sharon and Angie Sorensen. Learned a ton from them. From there, I spent a year at my old high school that I graduated from, New Trier, worked under Jim Davis, and then opportunity opened up at St. Viator High School. I took over for Rich McLaughlin, who's fantastic. I think he's in the G League now. He's a fantastic strength and conditioning coach. Learned a lot from him. Recommended me for that job, took it, and then honestly, I actually got this job because I've had a lot of people ask me about getting into strength and conditioning at the high school level. And I'll tell you that I reached out to them, and I had heard about them. It was a school that's pretty local to where I live. And when I reached out to them, I was like, hey, you guys have had some success athletically. It was a big school. It was growing. I was like, what's your appetite for a strength and conditioning coach? That started the conversation. And initially, they said they offered me a position, and they were like, yeah, but it's going to be kind of like half of like you would be in the athletics department helping us with like finance stuff, and then the other half would be you get to do strength and conditioning. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's not for me right now. I'm like, I'm past those days a little bit. I'm like, if this was 1 or 2 years into my career, maybe. But I was like, yeah, sorry. And then they came back and they were like, you know what, let's hire you full time. So that's how I ended up here. And it's been awesome, man. I love that place.
I just want to
and
say
they've been so good to me.
that's such an awesome story too, because I hear so much at the college level, like, oh, people are dropping down to high school, go get a high school job. There's so many high school strength coach jobs out there. Yeah, maybe down south, but for me, I'm a New England guy. There's not high school jobs here in New England. I can't just leave here and say, oh, I'm going to go get a high school job. I'd have to go advocate for it. I'd have to go ask for it. I'd have to go get the district of whatever school I want to work at to literally carve out a ton of money out of their budget to make that happen. So really cool. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that, I hear it as a college coach a ton. Oh, there's so many high school jobs. Just go do high school. It's so much better. I wish I could get a high school job. That would be awesome, but it's one of those things. It's not as easy as people think. I love that.
No.
Now, competitiveness at DePaul, what is the level of competition there, and what kind of athletes are we working with?
Yeah, I mean, it's high. So let's see. I'm going to try and rattle off some of the accolades, and I just want to be super clear. This is not me taking credit for these things in any way, shape, or form. This is the students and the coaches and all those people. But so 3-time back to back to back state champions in basketball. First team in Illinois history in basketball to jump up a level and still win the state championship. So that was really cool. Won state in football last year at the 4A level. We were second place in cross country, third place in girls volleyball, third or fourth place in girls volleyball. And baseball, I know they have made it downstate before. I don't know that we've quite got there, but a lot of really high caliber athletes. I know basketball especially has sent got a few different guys playing at the Division I and Division II level right now. Football, we got a few guys playing at the Division I level and a few more at high level Division III programs. So yeah, definitely no slouch. We're a competitive team in the area, and it's been really awesome, especially because the school is relatively new. It's only about 11 years old, but it's caught on very quickly.
And then what does the strength conditioning look like? Is it built into the school day? Is it built into like PE curriculum? Is it a before school, after school activity? Just give us kind of the layout of what you provide.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. I have 2 PE classes that are they're called varsity strength and conditioning PE, and they're only for our varsity athletes. When I first took the job, the head football coach had basically asked for this class to be created, and they had approved it. And so I jumped in with him and started that. And then we've started to expand the class. And now we have 2 periods of it a day. At first it was just for the football team, and now we've expanded it and opened it up to all of our varsity sports. So I have those 2. And then I have, just depending on the day, a few sessions, maybe 2 to 3 hours after school as well. So my day shifted a little back, but it's much better considering, and I know there's probably plenty of high school coaches out there who know this situation. The previous places where I was at, like I was pretty much only doing after school stuff. So that was, you work with what you got. I appreciate the fact that they were willing to employ me in the first place. So I'm not going to turn my nose up to that, but I would get there a little later in the day, but I'm staying till 8, maybe 9 o'clock at night. I have a family now, and my wife made it very clear that she was not gonna let that happen anymore. So glad that I had this situation. So yeah, 2 classes during the day, and then a little bit after school, but yeah, I continue to pare that down as the class expands.
Awesome. And then anything in the summer? Do you do summer camps? Do you do anything like that to keep them going, or?
Yeah, so in the summer, I basically I make myself available to any teams that are doing camps. So like football, I see all summer. Girls volleyball, I saw all summer. Um, there are a few teams that take advantage of it, especially those that similarly run a lot of their own stuff in the summer. And I'll do, like that's one of the other nice things about being at the high school level is I do have the opportunities to run my own camp. So like I'll do a youth speed and strength camp for 2 weeks, which is a nice way to supplement my income. It's great. And it's also making some connections with some athletes in the area. Helps with the recruiting side because we are a private school. So that is a piece of it that, we have to do as well. So yeah, in the summer, it's kind of like I could technically, I guess, if I wanted, just be like, see ya. But I don't want to do that. And again, my wife, who I love very much, would probably murder me if I was doing nothing all summer and home all day and bothering her. So yeah, I'm pretty active in the summer.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Same thing. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's get into the meat of this. And I always try and bring a guest on, somebody who's doing something really well. People have said that you are the guy when it comes to talking about triphasic training. You do a great job of blending it into the high school level. So just get us started here first. Talk about triphasic training. Maybe some of the first things that you've implemented, things that you really like about it, and how you've kind of made that work at your level down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something that I've done pretty much every place that I've been. And a big part of that is because, I read Triphasic. It was one of the first books that I really got into, and it just made a ton of sense to me. The way that Cal kind of broke everything down, and the way that he explained everything. And so it's really morphed over the years. So when I first started doing it, I would say that I was one of those people that was like kind of following it like to the letter of the law, so to speak. Yeah. I was like, we must do this, and we must follow these percentages, and we must follow. And I was like, I was pretty staunch about adhering to the principles in the book. And then as I'm sure is familiar with a lot of people, you get away from that because it's like I recognize that number one, I mean, the first reason why I think you have to be willing to adapt it to your situation is because like it's intense, especially the way that it's written in the book. I remember early on, and this will serve as my retroactive apology to some of those athletes I worked with that I was maybe a little bit younger and more naive. Like a great example is like French contrast, right? So during that eccentric block and that isometric block and the concentric block in the above 80% range, he advocates for using French contrast training in alongside the lifting. And I think number one, like when it's laid out in front of you in a book about how French contrast is supposed to work, it seems really straightforward and it seems really simple. And in the actual implementation of it, it is not so much. And it's intense. It's not meant to be something that you're just like throwing an athlete into. And so I think what I found was I was really wearing them out way more than I thought that I was. Like I was frying their central nervous system. I think our tendons weren't prepared for it. I think our muscles weren't prepared for it. I think there were so many things where like it was like I just threw you into the fire, man, and I didn't give you a lot of that like prerequisite that you needed to be able to handle this kind of stimulus. And so that was one of the first big things that really jumped out to me.
I just
Um,
Before we keep going, I just want to say I'm in 100% agreement. Even at the college level, I think there's too many kids that aren't ready for it. This is one of my favorite quotes from Cal. I've met Cal before. I went and did RPR level 2 with him, and when I was in grad school, he actually spoke to our class, and he said, and I'll never forget. I love this quote. He said, "Monsters make you wonder why they hate the weights so much." And he said that those kids that are just monsters that bring intent and intensity and they bring that to those are the kids that benefit from triphasic training because they pour everything they can into it. you know Eccentrics will last 2 weeks tops, isos 2 weeks tops, because any more than that, and those kids, they can only rally up so many times and smash their head against the barbell. Eventually, you're right, like they're going to tank out. But to be honest with you, there's a lot of kids that aren't monsters. They are athletes. They like playing their sport, but they're not here to just smash their face as hard as they can training wise, because they know that they got to go to practice later. They know that they got to look good out on the field when they're doing X, Y, and Z with their coach later. So they're always going to reserve. They're always going to hold back. And there's very few kids that are going to willingly pour everything they can into the training to get everything out of it. So instead, you're just kind of like muddling around in this middle zone, or you're absolutely tanking the kids, like you said. So,
yeah,
I agree with you. I've made that mistake too of trying to run the true triphase and trying to really like stick to it. And it's just one of those things you learn over time. Like that only works at Cal with his place and his setup and his room. And, it doesn't work everywhere else. And that's okay. But there's a
yeah.
lot of good principles that you can still take away. So what are some things that you've taken away that you really do like and you keep in your program now?
Yeah, so the biggest things, I mean, obviously, like the like eccentrics are fantastic, especially for learners that are lifting. And like, I'm going to jump back just for one quick second, because one thing that I think that we lose sight of as strength and conditioning coaches is that lifting is a skill. It is not just a pure expression of strength. It is a skill. And like, we have to nurture that skill, right? And I think one of the things I learned fairly quickly running Triphasic was like, to get underneath an 80% plus load and lower it for 5 seconds and sit at the bottom for one. It's not just about like strength at that point. It's a skill. It's a skill to learn how to strain like that. It's a skill to control the weight like that, to end up in good positions. And it's like that, that's the thing that I just think for me was one of the biggest revelations was realizing that is that like, you just think that like, well, your strongest kids are going to be your best lifters. Not necessarily, man. You can be strong as an ox, but if you haven't done it 100 times, if you haven't done, a million reps or something, like it's a skill more than anything else.
I tell people all the time, I notice it even on something like hurdle jumps, right? Is the kids that have elasticity, the kids that it's a learned skill. In the first couple of weeks, it doesn't look good and they're stuck. And it's like, it's not always just like, oh yeah, they're adapting, they're becoming. No, I think they're just like learning the skill a little bit and they're learning how to get off the ground faster, even snap downs and things like that. You can tell the kids that have done 100, 200, 300 reps and know how to quickly decelerate and hit an isometric. Same thing with squats, like teaching them how to actually throw themselves down to a bottom of a squat. Nice. That's hard. It's not and to be honest with you, it's one of those things that I've gone back and said, I don't need to stress myself out about trying to teach all this, because at the end of the day, like I get them for 60 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Their sport coach gets them for 20 hours almost, or more, or they're thinking about their sport for even more. So same thing with Olympic lifts. Why am I so stressed about teaching these things when it's such a skill, but it's not a skill that's going to make them better? Find the easiest way to make them better and give them the raw tools they need, and then go let them use those raw tools with skills that actually matter on the court, on the field, etc. I'm with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that digression aside, like I'll say too that not all of my kids love the weight room the way that I do. And that's okay. And I think that was another thing, was like, especially early on in my coaching career, I'm like, I found my way back to the weight room because this is the place that I felt comfortable, because I wasn't very good at the sport I played. But I was like, the weight room, I could kill it because it was just about effort, and I love getting stronger and all that. But a lot of these kids don't. And I think it's about tying in what you're doing to what they want to be doing, right? Is what we're doing in the weight room helping you on the court, on the field, in the pool, wherever it may be, and helping them make that connection that's going to elicit kind of more of that buy-in. So I say all that to say, in terms of the things that we've kept, like I have started to shift my thinking a lot in terms of the way that I break up our days. So we still do eccentrics and isometrics. Like, so we'll still keep that block and that progression for most of our programs. And there's a heavy asterisks there. That's if they get to that point. I mean, I'm keeping it for like my juniors and my seniors that have been with me in the program. I'll still use eccentrics, I'll especially use them. I'll really rely on them for my younger levels. Just because that's, again, talking about teaching the technique. So like eccentrics, with like goblet squat, we do those. The freshmen are, our relationship isn't fantastic at the end of their freshman year because they've done so many eccentric goblet squats. But I'm like, hey, this is going to help us in the long run, and I promise you, it won't be a part of your life forever, or at least for the next 4 years. But so I think from a technique standpoint, eccentrics can be super helpful because so many of them, especially my boys, when they first come into the weight room, they want to, it becomes, a pissing contest of I can lift the most because I've been lifting with my dad since 7th grade. And forcing them to really slow down and work through that full range of motion and control the weight, I think has been super useful for us. But if I'm talking about kind of my older groups, um, Hunter Eisenhower, who is another strength and conditioning coach, I believe he's at Arizona State. He's got his force system. And I'll be honest, that was kind of a real eye opener for me. I think because that, to me, if you're talking about transfer to sport, makes the most sense in terms of how to think about our training. Because it's I force, it's fast force, it's slow force, and it's human force. And it's about how to apply those, right? So we want to be able to produce a lot of force. We want to be able to produce it very quickly. And also we want to be able to handle the forces coming at us. So when I program now, I do it through that lens of like, we're going to have our high force day. We're going to have a slow force day. We're going to have a fast force day. Ideally, if I'm seeing them enough, we'll also have that human force day, which is vital for us and like really important, but I don't always get that opportunity with everybody. So Triphasic, I would say, has maintained as kind of like our primary slow force day. Because again, the eccentric block, the isometric block, that's where on those slow force days, what we're focused on is we're really focused on like, that's just like the pure strength stuff. And it's like, we're armor building, we're trying to put some muscle on them, which at the high school level is if you have someone on that's got tips and tricks about that, I mean, they share my number because I would love to know. But yeah. So that's pretty much the way that it like has maintained a foothold in our program, is because I do think it makes a lot of sense, especially because for the first few weeks of the off season, we're running APRE. And I think that has been a huge help for us. And a great way to teach them, what it feels like to strain and lift through, like, especially those last few reps, right? Like learning how to, okay, I'm tired, but I got to get one more. I'm going for one more, like, again, a skill. And so typically we'll run APRE 6 for 3 to 4 weeks, just depending on how things are looking, how things are going. We'll transition to APRE 3. And then from the APRE 3 is where we will get our maxes. Now, I also will shave a little bit off of that based on like our training maxes will be based off that APRE 3. And then we'll generally go about like 90% of that will be the number that we base off of when we go into triphasic. And then we'll run through, we got our 2-week eccentric, 2-week isometric, 2-week concentric on those slow force days. We will not do French contrast because I learned that lesson already. But we will do contrast pairings typically. So it's literally just, we go from our heavy primary lift, whatever it may be, say back squat, we pair that with our some sort of plyo. And it's just that simple. And that formula has worked really well for us. And the way that I do it is, similar to how, it's taught in triphasic, which is like you're trying to match kind of you're trying to match the movement, the primary movement and the plyo so that they're biomechanically similar, right? So if we're squatting,
we take it a step further. We try and match whatever the lifting piece that day is as well.
Yeah.
So for us, I think we're in agreement here. If it's an acceleration themed day,
Yeah.
I try and pair my days based on what we're doing for field work and things like that, because we're usually doing them back to back. An acceleration themed day is going to have horizontal plyos in there, and it's going to also have primarily probably a single leg exercise for us. Whereas a max V day, we'll hit max V, we'll come inside. That'll be more of your typical bilateral squats or trap bar deadlifts, and we'll pair that with vertical plyos as well. So is that what you're saying? You're kind of like pairing that way, where you're not including the speed work?
So for us, we are, and I would say that's exactly right. So on our the way that we do it is we have a primary emphasis of the day, and then we have a secondary emphasis. And so, and again, completely stolen from Hunter. So, all credit to him. But like, because again, like, right, speed is also a skill, and all these things they're all skills. So, on our high force days, typically our primary emphasis is going to be change of direction and deceleration. Our secondary emphasis might be, either max velocity or acceleration, just kind of depends where we are. Fast force, same idea. We're either max velocity or acceleration, so on and so forth. You guys can fill in the rest of the picture without me yammering on here. Um, so yeah, we will do the same thing where it's like, depending on the day, it's like, yeah, if we're doing max velocity, then we're going to focus more vertically. If we're doing acceleration horizontally, change of direction, going side to side, all that. So we try and do that as well. And this is also a great place for me to plug when we're doing our APRE, the benefit of extensive plyometrics. That's something that I think is missing from a lot of high school programs, especially. And I think if you are talking bang for your buck, extensive plyometrics are going to be so huge. Number one, for pairing the tendons and the ligaments and the muscles for that more intense plyometric work that you want to do later on. But number two, also just like from a transfer like perspective, like the finding that rhythm, being able to bounce, increasing that elasticity in athletes. I mean, that's sport for the most part for a lot of these people.
I was
So
going to say, I think some of the underrated pieces of the whole triphasic system are a lot of the aerobic stuff, right? The contralateral circuits. Personally, like I think contra are phenomenal, and I've seen a lot of in my own personal health benefits from putting those in. But the long duration isometrics, I think, are awesome, but they're very misunderstood. And how do you fit them into a team setting? How do you get high school and middle school kids to do a split squat iso for 5 minutes without them, completely losing their minds? And then extensive plyos, I think, is such a big deal too. And I think they're criminally underrated. I don't know how much Tony Holler has an influence out there in Chicago, but I love Tony. I love Feed the Cats. I think it's done a lot of good things. But when all you do is intensive plyos or take days off, you're missing that big piece of extensive plyos too. So talk about kind of maybe some of those underrated areas, the long duration isos. We touched on extensive plyos a little bit there, but anything else kind of in that realm, not just the heavy lifting. I think people think
yeah,
triphasic, they think the heavy lifting, but there's a lot of really good things that are also part of it that people don't talk enough about.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. So Tony, shout out to Tony, man. He's got a huge foothold out here because he's also a Chicago area
I
guy.
got to get Tony on. I
Um,
love Tony.
he's great, man, and he's also we graduated from the same tiny school in Western Illinois, so we got that connection. And he's awesome, man. I love the way he thinks about things. But yeah, so I'm glad you brought some of that up because number one, the contralateral circuit is something that I if any of my students end up listening to this, and there's almost a 0% chance because they hear me talk enough, and the thought of voluntarily doing it is like, nails on a chalkboard to them, I'm sure. But we use that throughout, like, we use it all the time. And I think it's awesome. And I think it's great. And it's a fantastic way to build that aerobic base. We do still address that because I think it's important. I think that, I don't have to go through the science of it. I think we hopefully know, but it is helpful. And also, I think the other thing when you're at the high school level is like you have to think a little bit bigger picture than when you're working at high school. Or sorry, when you're working at college. Like performance is, yes, ultimately what we're after. Um, but I also have to realize that most of the kids in that room, like their days of focusing on performance end the second they cross that stage and they graduate. They're not concerned with that anymore. A lot of them are concerned with the size of their biceps and, looking sweet when they're on a porch with their buddies in college at their fraternity and, got the sleeveless shirts on.
I mean, I'm still worried about my bicep size and sitting on the
I
porch
mean, me
looking
too.
big, but
It's a lifelong struggle, brother. I get it.
but yeah, I mean,
um,
this stuff lasts well beyond college, well beyond high school, and
yeah,
there's benefits to it.
yeah, and I got to think too about like their health, right? And I mean, look, the heart health. matters, and like instilling these things in them matters. I mean, there's plenty of research that shows us why, you know, being like aerobically fit is good for longevity and good for the rest of your life. Like I don't want to just teach them that like you should just be a meathead the rest of your life, because I also have now had to like circle back and be like, hey man, maybe like go for a jog every now and again, and don't just, lift weights all the time because you're trying to be around for a long time.
And I'll be honest, one thing that I see more now is people, I love 5-3-1. I love kind of the lower APREs, the heavy stuff there. Even triphasic, a lot of the sets and reps is 4x3 or less. Or even, I'm seeing a lot of the 8x2s and the cluster training stuff now. But one thing that you miss with all that when you're chasing performance and you're chasing intensive plyos and you're chasing heavy singles, triples, and doubles is just a general work capacity. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what happened, but like there's nothing wrong with sets of 8, 10, and 12.
No.
I think we kind of got away from that a little bit of like, oh, we can just do 10 sets of 3 instead of 3 sets of 10. But there's some value in having a little bit of a longer duration set, or doing some circuits, or doing some general work capacity stuff for the sake of building up some work capacity, even at the college level. Sometimes I think we're concerned that, we don't want to overwork the kids and they're already doing enough outside of here. Let's focus on just, really getting them strong, really getting them powerful, really, really amplifying whatever metrics you want to measure. But work capacity is kind of getting thrown by the wayside. And work capacity in the weight room is different than just necessarily competing at your sport and practicing your sport. So that's why I still love the circuits, the contralateral stuff. And, one thing I need to get better at is doing the long duration stuff. Do you guys do the long duration ISOs? Do you mix some of that stuff in?
We do.
Other
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
maybe,
we do.
I'll do a ton of the ankle ISO series for sure. But I have a hard time getting these kids to split squat for 5 minutes without going crazy. So would love to hear what you got for advice there with that one.
Yeah, man. I mean, so we do it. And thank you, by the way, for always reeling me back. The people that know me that are listening are like, this sounds very much like my experience of talking to him, where we start in one place and we're going to end up, we're somewhere very different, but hopefully so thank you for reeling me back to why you brought me on. Um, but yeah, so we will do that as part of our slow force days. And we are building up. Typically what I start at is we're trying to build up to about a 3-minute hold on each side to start, like a split squat or a lunge hold. And the way that I sell it to them is I sell it to them that it is, for their tendons and their ligaments, and like that. I focus more on that piece of it, the health of, the structure of the joints, especially because so many of these kids now, with everything going on year round, like they're beat up more than I recall being at that age. I got basketball players that are playing year round. There's literally no break. And now every other sport has kind of followed suit. My football players are doing 7-on-7 all year round, and they're going to tournaments, and they're constantly coming to me being like, oh, my knees, my knees, my knees. And so I've kind of blended some of the stuff from Jake Tura, if I'm saying that correctly, his jumper's knee protocol. Like, we'll use some of that in the weight room, along with the long isometric holds, because they need it. And the way that I get them to do it, honestly, is like, number one, this is something that's just part of our like our program is I let them pick the music. And I think I've kind of heard from people about like music seems to be a big kind of thing where you fall in one direction or the other. In terms of like, some people are like, I'll choose the music, I'll play my music, and you'll all just like deal with it. I fall on kind of the other side where I'm like, I don't care, like listen to whatever you want to listen to. It's pretty much background noise to me at this point. And I'll say like, I don't like their music. I finally get what my parents were talking about. I don't understand it. But it is what it is. That's what they like. So a lot of times what we have is we have an iPad that has just a Spotify premium account. And I say, as long as it's not interfering with what we're doing, you go up, you put on whatever you want. Right. So that's number one. So it's kind of become this thing now where like, when they know that we're going to do those long holds, it's like someone will pick a song that everybody is like into, right? Um, and it'll be like they're singing along with it, they're kind of like vibing to it. Um, I've had some athletes start like playing rock, paper, scissors. And these are all things that like look from a perspective of doing these things to the best of their ability. Do I think that like they should be doing that? Right? Probably not, right? Like, but at the same time, I would rather them do that. And when they're doing that, if I give them that little bit of freedom and then I go over to them and I'm like, you need to get lower, they listen. Whereas if the whole time it's just me being like, you sit there and you shut up and you like, like make a game out of it. Like allow them to be them to some degree as much as fits into your program. That's something that's big
A-
for me.
As much as we love the kids, in my opinion, it's kind of the same thing with RPR. As much as we love them to be dialed in and doing everything to a T, and they're in their isometric hold and they're contracting and they're squeezing the entire time for 3 minutes. Again, there's not many of those people that are monsters with just a crazy level of intent that want to, But if they're in the ISO, they're in the hold, they're getting the tendon creep, they're getting the long duration aspect of it. I can live with it, and we can get what we need out of it. They're going to get the adaptation. I can live with it. Is
Yeah.
it as good? No, it's not going to be as good. But for every 100 kids, you might have one that's like a psychotic kid that just wants to sit there and contract the entire time. And then the rest are, and that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
let's fly this plane home here. Let's wrap this thing up a little bit.
Yeah.
One more question for you. So Triphasic 2 came out, and I skimmed through it. I'm not going to say I read it yet because I haven't read it. I haven't sat down. I
Yeah.
haven't got my highlighter out. I've skimmed it. But for people that are picking that up, what is something in there that maybe you're excited about, or something that Cal has kind of put out the past couple of years that you're excited to put in, or something that you have maybe this semester or this summer that you put in that you're like, wow, that was an awesome addition to what we're doing.
Yeah. That's a great question. Man.
I mean, we talked about off air, we talked about performance cycling, and I haven't started putting that
Yeah.
in yet, but I mean, that's one of those things that like, that sounds like it is probably a really good idea, maybe depending on the time of the year, how to fit that in. Is there anything else in there that you were like, yep, that's a nice new wrinkle?
Yeah. I don't know necessarily that but outside of performance pattern cycling, I think that's the biggest thing that I would take from that. And I'm going to out myself a little bit here. I read Triphasic 2, and it's like I've read Cal's website, Excel Athlete, and so where what came from is like kind of swirling in my head a little bit of like what's the source of
No
it.
doubt,
So
because it
like,
feels like
yeah,
you've read all those parts before. Now they're all together
yeah,
into the book. So I'm with you
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Give us a,
So
a breakdown of maybe performance cycling then, and how you've kind of fit that into your room and what you do. Because I'm always curious how other people are doing it. And I know we can drop Tony Villani a shout out. I know you got the Shredmills up there too, and I know those are part of
yeah.
your performance cycle.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that it's a like, and I might bastardize a little bit about, I might bastardize this a little bit, but like essentially what you're doing is you are mapping on similar to what we talked about earlier, where we have like a theme to the day, but it's a circuit that is going to all kind of lead into one aspect of performance, right? And the idea is that you're doing some sort of lifting. Um, at the top, some sort of strength movement, and then you're going to follow that with a plyo movement that maps onto that. And typically, I believe there's a second strength movement in there to kind of like help, because I believe that the initial idea behind it with Cal was that, like, let's say you do a a heavy squat, right? And then you're trying to do something more horizontally focused, a plyo that's more horizontally focused. The concern was that, because of the impact that that squat had on the quads versus the hamstrings, that it's going to mess with the pattern of it. And so by also throwing in something on the backside, like an RDL, it's going to help even it out and kind of smooth out that movement, right? So the way that we use it is we do have two Shredmills. They have been fantastic. So shout out to Tony, and shout out to like just Shredmill as a company. I will say, like, they've been so awesome to us. And Tony has said that like he wants to educate people, and like he is as open of a book as exists. And I will say, like, the amount of information he gives out is just incredible. And he really just wants to help people and progress this field. So shout out to him and shout out to them. But so for us, it'll be something like if we're doing an acceleration day and we're stuck inside, because we're in Chicago and that happens all the time. We will do our acceleration day inside, and what it might look like is we'll be over at the rack and we're doing our strength movement, right? And so we'll just say split squat. So we go split squat, and then we'll do something again on the backside. So we're going to do a split squat, and then we might do like a kickstand RDL. We might do a regular RDL, something to hit the backside. And then we're going to do something more horizontally focused, where we're talking probably for us, depending on where we are in the year, we'll start with a broad jump, but then we might transition to a bound. And because I think that maps on to, I mean, ultimately that's what acceleration is, just bounding, but much quicker. So we'll go from squat, RDL, bound, then we hop on the Shredmill. On the Shredmill, a fantastic piece of equipment, if you can afford it, for acceleration. So you hit the Shredmill for 5 seconds, you hop off, give yourself about 30 seconds, and then we're running a 1 into 10 fly, because that's what our weight room allows. And then after that, typically what we'll do is I'll throw something in there, whether it be upper body, whether it be, core, something to kind of like almost like reset before we go back to the top. And you run through that 2 to 3 times, depending on where you are. You could go as many as 4.
If you don't put a reset in there, you don't put something in there to slow the kids down, they'll rip 3 sets in 3 minutes. And you're like, guys, there's the thing called rest. We need to have a little bit of rest in between these sets.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great way to control the flow of the room, because like you and I were talking about before we started recording, like, you can preach rest times to them as much as you want, but they sometimes just want to go, 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 go. So sometimes you got to put those things in. So whether it's something for shoulder health, whether it's like literally just a plank, whether it's a dead bug, like just something that's going to force them to slow down and, work on an area that's not going to impact that other stuff that we're doing, that acceleration focused work. But yeah.
Coach, I forgot to ask this question at the beginning, but it's probably a really good question to end on here. You've carved a great life for yourself. It sounds like you got a phenomenal job. You got the wife, you got the kids, you're doing it all in a profession that doesn't historically, you're right, it's a tough job. It's long hours. The pay is not the best in the world yet. We're getting there. But what keeps you going? What do you love about it? And maybe that can serve as some inspiration for some young coaches out there that are going through the grind right now, and they want to be you. They want to have the life that you have.
Yeah. Man, you give me like goosebumps there, because it forces me to reflect and be like, yeah, I'm so fortunate. What keeps me going? I think the kind of mantra that I've always fell to is be the coach that you wish you had. And that's kind of my guiding light in all of this. Being even a small part of the success of my athletes has been so rewarding. And even on my worst days, and Lord knows that you're going to have some tough days in this profession. That's the thing that really has just stuck with me, man. Being able to see them set a goal and achieve that goal. And, I got a guy right now who's playing at Illinois State. His name is Patrick Bauer, fantastic athlete and killing it over there. And him and I, very close, we still talk to this day. And one of the things I can tend to, I don't ever like to take credit for an athlete's success, just because I think it's a little, that could be a whole separate podcast of arguing about how much impact we actually have on, the game and everything like that. But when we were talking about him going to play at the next level, I was like, you know what, man, like that's awesome. Congratulations. You worked your butt off. And he was like, oh, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And I said to him, I'm like, dude, I didn't do it. I'm like, that was you, man. That was your hard work. And And he was really adamant. He was like, no, coach, like I wouldn't. He's like, you taught me so much. You helped me get here. Like I, I, I truly believe in my heart that like this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for your guidance, like that kind of stuff. And even smaller example is the kids that come back from college and they're like, I still lift, I still go to the weight room and I do all the stuff that we did, the programs that we did. Like I'm running them back. I'm like heck yeah, dude. Like that's the stuff that keeps me going. And yeah, that's kind of my why.
You're setting the example, and you're building the next generation. You're leaving something behind too that is going to keep going long after your days. And I feel the same thing. You know, it's the lessons, it's the lifestyle, and in a day and age where people are less physically active than ever, there's still so many benefits to not just being in the weight room, but playing sports in general. There's so many lessons to get back in. I wouldn't be here today without, for me, like the weight room and then also playing sports as well. So I'm just trying to get back what it has given me. So, Coach, this was great, phenomenal episode. I appreciate you jumping on. And
Of
if
course,
people
man.
want to talk to you, if people want to find you, I know you're not the biggest guy on social media. I know that's not your thing, but where can people maybe get a hold of you if they have some more questions they want to ask you?
Yeah, so you can reach out. I'm actively working on increasing my social media presence. So when you said at the top that I wasn't a big name, that's exactly right. I'm not a big name because I am putting my stuff
Yes.
out there because I'm terrible at it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll throw that on there. But DePaul Prep SNC on Twitter, X, I don't know whatever that thing's called now. You can also reach out to me. My email, easy way to get a hold of me is anadolna@depaulprep.org. If you go to the DePaul College Prep website, it's also on there. But yeah, I mean, reach out. I'm happy to talk. As you can tell, I love doing it. So I appreciate you having me on. And I hope I hit all the things that we meant to hit. But yeah, if I didn't, which is, like I said, a common occurrence for me, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of this.
Awesome. Thanks again for jumping on, Coach, and thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. If you're serious about building better athletes and building a stronger program, don't stop with just this podcast. I encourage you to check out my new community, the Gridiron Warrior Insiders. Got it set up right here, and there's so many good things in there. So we have a weekly live Q&A where you can ask me questions. I'll answer them for you. I'll go over topics too if we don't have any questions. We'll get something done every week. We have Wildcat webinars. So I'm going to bring in a guest speaker to run the offense for me and have them come in and give us kind of an hour-long presentation about a topic that they're really good at. You'll have early access to every podcast episode, weeks or months before I even decide to launch them, because we've already got 10 to 15 in the books ready to go. The equipment room, right? So anything you need here, so discount codes, affiliate links, bonus content, anything that I think is important, we'll put it in there. Obviously, discounted prices for any of our courses, scores and stops, contact prep, summer program, it's all there. And then the biggest thing for me is that you'll get a free ticket to our live seminar that we're going to host here at Rhode Island this summer. It's going to be sick. You want to get in the community. If you want to keep getting better, you want to help get your program better. Link is in this podcast description. It's in my bio. Check it out. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day.